Walter, I've been very interested in free will, but frankly, from an abstract, metaphysical, neuroscientific point of view, but there is real world consequences in terms of our judicial system when you hold people responsible. How do you build this relationship between free will and moral responsibility?
Well, the first thing you have to do is to understand what responsibility is.
Okay.
And people use the term for a lot of different things. So we got to get clear what we're not talking about. We're not talking about the drought is responsible for the famine. Because all that means is the drought causes the famine. It doesn't mean we're going to punish the drought somehow if we could. What we're talking about with responsibility, I take it, is the kind of condition that makes someone liable to punishment or sanction of some sort. Maybe just guilt feelings or public disapprobation or condemnation, but some kind of punishment. So to say that someone's responsible is to say that they are the kind of creature who is appropriately subject to some kind of negative sanction or punishment of a certain sort. Okay? Then there are going to be a lot of different theories about when people are responsible in that sense. There are mesh theories that Harry Frankfurt made famous, where the question is whether your desires fit together in the right way. So an addict who can't control whether or not they take drugs, well, they're still going to be responsible if they're happy being an addict, if they desire to be an addict, if they want to want those drugs. But they're not going to be responsible if they wish they could quit and they've tried and they failed, right? So they want not to want the drugs. They want to not be an addict anymore, and they can't. So that kind of mesh theory has a certain plausibility to it, I think. The competing theory, the main competing theory in philosophy these days, is the reasons responsiveness theory, that you're responsible when you're able to respond to reasons. First, you can detect when you have a reason to do something or not to do it, and then you act accordingly. If you have a reason to do it, you do it. If you have a reason not to do it, you don't do it. So, for example, someone is a compulsive hand washer. They wash their hands 10 times an hour. They know they don't need to. They know they don't have any reason to wash their hands. Matter of fact, they know they have a reason not to wash their hands because their hands are getting raw and hurt every time they wash, but they still do it. They're not responding to the reasons for and against washing their hands, so they're not responsible for washing their hands. So again, in that kind of case, that theory seems pretty plausible to capture them. But I actually hold a theory that I think in a way captures both of the truths behind those approaches. It's what Chandra Sripada has called the deep self theory. And the idea is that you're responsible for actions when those actions issue from you and your deep self, from parts of your character, aspects of a character that make you the person that you are. And one might say that the fact that your desires mesh in the right way shows that it's part of your deep self. You might say that the fact that you're responding to the relevant reasons shows that it's part of your deep self. But there's more to it than that. And that can be, I think, illustrated by a simple case. There was an individual who lived in Virginia in the year 2000. He was a pretty normal person who had in his second marriage, had married someone with a daughter already. So he had a stepdaughter, who I believe was about 10 or 12 years old at the time. And he was perfectly normal and started to collect pornography all of a sudden. And by the summer, he was collecting child pornography. And in September of that year, he molested his stepdaughter. And then by October, he got in trouble. They convicted him of child molestation. And by October, he was losing coordination. He was urinating on himself without being bothered. And he was soliciting staff in the sex treatment program that he had been committed to. All of a sudden, they have to kick him out of this program, send him, to jail. Right before he's sentenced, they realize that this has gone too far, and they do an MRI, and sure enough, he's got a big right orbital frontal tumor, which they take out, and when they take it out, he's fine.
Back to his normal self.
Back to his normal self. No more desire to have sex with kids. But then 10 months later, tumor grows back, Now he's got that desire back again. They take it out again, then it's gone again. It looks, for all the evidence that we've got, like the tumor is causing this behavior, not him. And my thought is, well, maybe he could respond to reasons, maybe he could meet other conditions, but the bottom line is, it's a tumor, it's not him. And what's making him do these things is something outside himself. And that's, I think, the basic intuition behind saying, as I would, and I think many people would, he's not really morally responsible. He might, have had some control over how soon he did it or how much he did it. But the bottom line is, overall, he's not responsible, because what caused him to want to do this stuff in the first place was the tumor.
Well, that leads directly into the relationship with free will, because then your claim would be that that tumor caused him in some way not to have free will, that his behavior was constrained.
Right. And that's just what freedom is. It's lack of constraints. So if the tumor is constraining him and moving him in directions that become inevitable because the tumor keeps growing, so sooner or later he's going to do it, then he's constrained to act in a certain way by this medical condition, not because of the kind of person he is.
Yeah, some would claim that, great, Walter, you have me now on a slippery slope. So if something on my brain can do it, maybe my brain can do it itself. And by the end of the argument, nobody's responsible for anything.
Right. And I think it doesn't go all the way down the slope. So the burden is going to be, where do you draw the line between the tumor case and the normal person to be able to say these people are responsible and those people are not responsible? And my answer to that question is, that's a bad question. You shouldn't ask, is someone responsible or not, as if there's an on-off switch and bam, this person is, that person's not. There are going to be degrees of responsibility. And when you've got a tumor, you've got a clear-cut case because it's clearly external to him. It's a disease. It's not the kind of person he is. Everybody agrees this person was a nice person, although maybe a little scary in some ways. Whereas if it's a normal person playing golf, gambling, taking a drink, driving home, whatever they're doing, and they're doing it because that's what they want to do right now. That's part of their character. That's the kind of person they are. That's what their deep self is. Then they are responsible. Between those, there's going to be a continuum, right? Between there are going to be degrees of responsibility, and then some people are more responsible than others. That brings us back to the old practical question of what are we going to do about it? If someone's responsible, what difference does that make? And it makes a big difference in whether we're going to punish them or sanction them, and especially in the law. Part of the problem, part of the tension in this whole issue is that the law wants to say, this person's guilty and they're going to go to prison. This person's not guilty and they're not going to go to prison. But you have to split them into these two boxes. And in reality, there's a continuum of degrees of responsibility. And it's not always so easy to just put them in one box or the other.